Welcome to the Drive-By Entrepreneur Podcast, which exists to bring current and compelling content to entrepreneurs and influencers of small to mid-sized organizations. I'm John Frank, fellow entrepreneur and the owner of Third Road Management. And with this podcast, we will connect with a variety of experienced and dynamic individuals to shed some light on both the art and science of entrepreneurship. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our sponsors. First, my very own Third Road Management, a company that brings fractional CFO services to small and mid-sized organizations by revolutionizing the CFO suite. We'd also like to thank Two Hound Red, a brewery and restaurant located in Glen Ellen, Illinois, that is focused on creating classic, innovative beer and food. And finally, we'd like to thank NWC Media, which provides inbound marketing technology, project workflow management, and efficiency consulting to organizations of varied sizes, who is also the producer of the Drive-By Entrepreneur podcast. JP Boulus, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you here, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is exciting. I'm really excited to unpack. You've been on my list of people to chat with. Obviously we've known each other for a little while here, but I think the nature of your business is so unique that I still have a lot to learn about it. So I'm looking forward to doing that. But I think other people as well will really find a lot of value in it. So pumped to get started and dive in. I usually start by just, it's obviously the Drive-By Entrepreneur podcast. I say the mission statement is to bring current and compelling content to entrepreneurs and influencers of small to mid-sized organizations. And the idea is that, I have, a certain set of knowledge, you have a certain set of knowledge. And the more we can kind of learn from one another, I think the better off that, we're all going to be. So a lot of the guests are people like yourself that are industry experts. Some people are entrepreneurs themselves. But anyway, you get the idea. But excited to dive in. You specifically, so your title officially is you're the president of the Property and Casualty at Captive Resources. Why don't you take me a little bit, about your career journey, sort of starting from the beginning. And then maybe you could dovetail that a little bit into who Captive Resources is at a high level, and then what your specific role is. So we could take that off in little chunks here, but tell me about your journey. I know you're from Michigan originally.
Yeah, sure. So, thanks for having me, and I'm glad to hear your enthusiasm. Not many people are that excited about learning more about insurance, but that's part of what we do, and trying to change that narrative and hopefully get people pretty excited about the product that we've got. So I'll save that and just kind of walk you through my journey, as you said. I grew up in Michigan, small town outside of East Lansing, Michigan. So great upbringing, great place to grow up. I had a college town, right next door, and everything that came with that, and sports, and didn't have the big city like we've got here, but you had a lot of that kind of stuff with Michigan State basketball and football, and Detroit not far away. So awesome place to grow up. Moved here to go to school at Northwestern. It's kind of how I found my way to Chicago, and I've never left.
Yep.
So went to school there, was doing an internship during my senior year, or between my junior and senior year. Sorry, my last quarter of junior year, working for a sports agency in downtown Chicago. Mostly, football players and a few NFL guys, some Canadian folks and some arena guys back in the day. But when you're a young person, you love sports and had an athletic background, thought that was kind of the dream job. And my dad said to me, yeah, that's great. If you want to keep doing that unpaid internship and live in Chicago, figure out a way to supplement your rent for the summer, because I won't be paying for that. Which was good, and probably a great life lesson. So found myself in an internship at Arthur J. Gallagher, company that many people locally know.
Yep.
Big name here, and certainly much more of a common household name these days with the Cubs and everything they do for the city and their branding. So went through their internship program. got a pretty good high level view of what insurance is and I had no clue before that what being an insurance broker is. I thought that included a lot of Cubs games and some golf and a lot of client relation stuff, which I thought was fun. But there was a lot of hard work masked in that as well. But I ultimately took a job with them out of school.
Okay.
So I was on the retail broker side, and that's a big public company and a great place to start. Great training program, a lot of great relationships, many that I still have to this day. And actually, we do a lot of work with them to this day. So great organization, great place to start.
And sorry, just real quick pause. So what was your undergraduate degree then?
My undergraduate degree was in learning and organizational change. So, yeah,
Okay.
Northwestern, despite having a world-class business school that everybody knows in Kellogg, don't have much of a undergraduate business focus. Very liberal arts school, as you know. And so it was a degree a lot of people use to sort of go into management consulting and things like that. And I found myself in insurance, which was probably unique for most of my classmates, but it's been a real blessing.
And obviously not going the like law school agent
Yep.
route, so okay, so you start out Gallagher training program.
Yeah, go through the training program, and probably the best thing that happened to me early in my career at Gallagher was, um, I worked in the public nonprofit group, and I ultimately started my career in some concepts that were similar to what I'm doing now. Um, so, for example, one of my very first jobs was my boss had started a program for the school districts in the state of Wyoming. And it had just gotten off the ground. There were a couple school districts in the program when I started, and quite literally, he gave me an atlas, which sounds hilarious today.
Yep.
And sent me on the road to visit every school district in the state of Wyoming and try and convince them to join what was called a risk retention group or a school pool, which is basically a consortium of school districts coming together to cooperatively buy insurance, and some of what we'll get into later today, but a kind of a simpler version of the concept I now do at Captive Resources. So
Got it.
here I am. I'm 20 something years old. I'm 100% Lebanese. They don't see a lot of Lebanese folks with curly hair in the state of Wyoming. Gallagher had a requirement at that time that you had to wear a suit anytime you were doing a proposal. We've come a long way from that in today's working environment.
Yep.
So I'm out there in Wyoming as an early 20s, curly haired kid in a suit going to school board meetings with guys in cowboy hats and cowboy boots and getting yelled at for trying to take business out of the local community and, give it to a Chicago based business.
Yeah.
And I had some success doing that, right?
Yep.
And that was success I didn't really attribute to myself, being the greatest salesman in the world, but it was having something different, having a little bit more of a different product, an alternative product. It wasn't just a commodity. It wasn't a price-driven thing. And so that ultimately led me to where I am today. I kind of wanted to get on the private side of things. So found my way to Captive Resources about 17 years ago, almost now. And frankly, I liked what I was doing at Gallagher. Part of it was this alternative risk finance. Part was just kind of traditional retail brokered, which was a lot more commoditized. It's hard being a retail broker and you're making cold calls. And part of my job was calling on the school boards in Wyoming, and part of it was just making cold calls. And I didn't really love that part of it. And we work with brokers day in and day out now, and I have the ultimate respect for them. I mean, it's a very hard job.
Yep.
And wasn't sure if I really wanted to continue in insurance, frankly. Met the folks at Captive Resources. Knew vaguely about them at that time. We were a much different company then than we are today, but I knew of them. And I was studying for the GMAT, really contemplating whether I was going to change careers.
Yep.
And I said, I'll give this a year and let's see how it goes. I just had a good feeling about the people and about the company through my early interactions. And now here I am almost 17 years later.
Wow. Yeah. And I mean, I love that story of being in Wyoming and, just kind of thrown out there and being like, figure it out. I remember when I had a career switch into the Wall Street world, I mean, it was very much like, here's your Bloomberg, there's a phone, Go figure it out.
Yep.
You know, and I tell you, there's something. And I remember the guy that brought me in said, every day your skin is going to get a little bit thicker, a little bit thicker, a little bit thicker, until the point where you're like, somebody's like, never call me again. You're like, okay, I'll talk to you tomorrow. You know.
Absolutely, 100%.
You know, but I think it's a very formative thing to do. And like, I don't know, I tell anybody I can, you know, that's coming up through the system is like, you know, pay your dues, do your time, you know, do the hard things that not everybody wants to do, right? Because in the grand scheme of things, it's only going to make you better in the long run.
100%.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, that's something we talk a lot about with our newer folks here is, you know, just controlling the things you can control. And a lot of people ask me during the interview process, you know, what's it take to be successful? And the word I most commonly use is grind.
Yep.
Right? You just got to get up and grind. And, you know, that means something different to everybody. You know, certainly there's people that are doing, you know, jobs that are physically much more demanding than the careers you and I have chosen. And many of them are our customers, and they would laugh at the notion of us grinding, and probably rightfully so. But, you know, getting up early in the morning, taking flights, you know, leaving your house at 3 o'clock in the morning and taking flights to all over the country and being away from your kids and your family and missing sporting, that's a different kind of grind.
Yep.
And I think on where I'm at now at Captive Resources, our product is so good, our people are so good, the value proposition is so great in the long term for the right customer, that ultimately most of our people will be successful if they're willing to do that, if they're willing to put in the grind, especially early in their career as you're trying to establish relationships in the industry. You're trying to get, you know, brokers to ultimately, you know, trust you to put you in front of their best customers and prospects, and you're trying to build that validation with your end customer being the business owner.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of time.
And getting back up, just get back up.
Get back up. Dealing with rejection and
Yep. And I mean, just high level Captive Resources, because I know we're gonna double click on it. But the 1 minute elevator pitch would be what?
Yeah, and that's a great question. There's many versions of the elevator pitch for Captive Resources, but at our core, what we do is we are an independent consultant. We help, you know, entrepreneurial businesses like many of the ones that you support control their cost of insurance. You know, what does that mean? We set up and manage what are called member-owned group captives. A captive insurance company is a concept that is not unique to us. Been around forever. It's simply an insurance company that is controlled and owned by its members. Essentially, its policyholders are shareholders and shareholders are policyholders, vice versa. We really kind of pioneered the group concept of that. So taking this idea that was always been around for larger companies, Fortune 500, Fortune 100 type companies, been around for a long time, and bringing that to the middle market, and that's a concept we really pioneered in the 80s, and have grown that space and been the dominant player in that market since we started.
Awesome. And then your specific role as president of Property and Casualty, that's a division within Captive Resources. So you're leading as president in that
role. I'm trying to figure out what that means myself. That's literally about
kind
a week
fresh.
old.
There you go.
So
I'm sure you've worn a lot of hats in 17 years.
I have worn a few, not a lot, but you know, just came up in kind of a sales role and what we call a captive executive role, because at our core, what we are doing is running small insurance companies. So what we call our captive executives, they are just leading small insurance companies and everything that comes with that. So sales, operations, overseeing claims, loss control, putting on board meetings, making sure we keep up with regulations, and investments. We have a $7 billion mutual fund. You know, the people that are in those roles, like I did for many, many years, are not doing all of those components. They're leading a team of professionals that coordinates all of that on our members' behalf. So the easiest distinction that I always say between us and a broker is we represent customers and insureds as shareholders. They represent them as policyholders. We do a lot together, but we are really tasked with helping them run a successful insurance company. And that's what I did for many years. I was a little bit of a niche focused guy, primarily construction and transportation and oil and gas. A couple of the core industries that we do that we really focus on, but we kind of run the full spectrum. Then I kind of got into the management track about 5 years ago or so. 5 or 6 years ago, I slowly started divesting myself from my personal book of business and transitioning those relationships day to day and getting more into the management side of things. Ultimately, I was leading our sales up until a week ago with a team of people and kind of had a partner leading sales and marketing and being a member of our executive committee. And it's funny that you say it's a division of Captive Resources. We really didn't have any divisions.
Right.
We were, Property and Casualty was kind of the company. That's what the company was founded on. It's still the vast majority of our business today. But our next great push is into the medical stop loss space, like employee benefits. So we are kind of formalizing the distinction between those two divisions right now. So we'll have a medical stop loss division. We have the property and casualty division. We recently started an actuarial company, and we have a management company that's based in the Cayman Islands as well.
Okay. So thematically, just, you've already kind of started this, but understanding captive insurance, like you said, one of the biggest things is education, right? Because most people, like myself, the first time I heard it, I was like, what? Like, God bless you, you said what? So like break it down in like simple terms, like you were trying to explain it to your kids, right? Like what size company let's start there. Like let's say it's a construction company, right? And what size is that company? How many employees maybe do they have? And then like how does it I know generally speaking how it all comes together, but like I'm sure you've had this conversation a few times. So.
I have, and it's funny. I mean, I'm not trying to dodge the answer, but I think you'll be amazed at sort of the range. It's hard for me to give you a typical customer anymore, and we're excited about that because that's really evolved over time. I mean, I think we would say we've always really been targeting the middle market or upper middle market. What does that mean? That's a pretty broad range. 80% of our portfolio is made up of companies that do 10 million to 1 billion in sales, right?
Okay.
100 employees to 2,500 employees make up the vast majority of our portfolio. So it is really all over the board.
Right. But not too small, even at 10 million.
Yeah.
Like you were saying.
So not too small. A risk factor is a big component of this because really what we're trying to do is we're trying to save companies money, right?
Yep.
And I mean that's part of why you're in business and to help companies save money. Ultimately, we're trying to help them save money, and small companies can have big insurance spends if they're in hazardous business, if they are in transportation, if you are drilling for oil and gas, if you're a temp staffing business, if you are if you're in many of the trades. Those are tough. Those are tough risk profiles. They don't sit here in hoodies in their office like you and I do. They can get hurt going to work. So ultimately our goal is to help them save money. And people that are doing 20 million in sales as a roofing contractor could be paying a lot more than a company that's doing $100 million in sales in retail or professional services. So that's why you see kind of the big range. Ultimately our goal is to help companies do two things. It's to help them be safer, number one, and just our chairman and founder and chairman likes to use the phrase we were founded on the idea of saving lives and limbs. I like to say we are kind of tasked, and I know this sounds kind of hokey, and we're just talking about insurance here, but we're really tasked in my mind of helping employers ensure that their employees come home from work the same way they went to work in the morning and they return to their families that way. And, I know that kind of sounds grand, but at our core, I think that's what we're trying to do. and ultimately through doing that, the second goal is to help save them money.
Yeah.
And I think we do both of those things pretty well. We've done a lot of analysis about how kind of powerful our product is, and it's more than the product. It's really a culture. Like, you join one of these, you hope to save money, and almost everybody saves money when they join up front, right? Or they wouldn't join. But the real opportunity is to save money through ownership by investing in safety and loss control, mitigating your claims on the front end, and managing the costs when you have them, and ultimately being rewarded for any investments that you make by you own a portion of the insurance company or the insurance risk. You own the company along with all the other members in the group. And you have a chance to save money on the back end through a return of underwriting profit and investment income that would otherwise go to insurance companies. So really rewarding people for making that investment. And we think we do that really well. There's about 25% return on your money overall in our portfolio on top of what you save up front. That's pretty significant savings when you're talking about a $4 billion portfolio that we are today. We'll return north of 400 million in dividends to our members just this year, 4 billion in total. So a lot of money that otherwise would have been going to insurance companies is going back to business owners. And I think maybe more importantly, we have half the fatality rate of industry averages, and that's something I'm really proud of. We're not doing the hard work. We're just kind of fostering the culture of safety and loss prevention and kind of peer pressure that accumulates in these groups to perform. And kind of just, it subtly comes through the investment they've made in joining an insurance company, and then it kind of more aggressively shows up from just being around like-minded business partners with whichever captive that you're in. And so seeing that reduction, we have about 25% less work comp claims than industry averages, half the fatalities. I mean, those are pretty meaningful when you talk about people going home the same way they left.
Yeah. And so any one captive, is it industry specific?
Great question. It can be. We have 45 different programs. A number of them are industry specific. A number of them are what we call heterogeneous, kind of broad mix of business. So the industry specific tend to be for your tougher classes of risk that the generalist, if you will, might not want to share as much of that kind of liability.
That makes sense.
Right. So you think construction, temp staffing, oil and gas, transportation. Those are a lot of the homogeneous industry specific programs. You think broadly of our other groups, they're like any other insurance company. They might have a little bit of construction or a little bit of transportation, but light manufacturing, distribution, wholesale, retail, professional services, kind of more benign risks, and they manage that portfolio so that they don't get too heavy, in the hard stuff. But we want to have an outlet for the hard stuff as well, because we think we can be successful and build successful insurance companies if we find the right companies in just about any industry.
Got it. So on the front end, are you underwriting do they already exhibit safety, like a safety mindset?
Yep.
Right? Obviously you're going to do training, you're going to do all that kind of stuff too. But on the front end, are you trying to vet out, are they committed to this?
We are. Yeah. Sometimes that's there's multiple different kind of processes to go through, right? You have the data part of it, and but some people can have great loss experience with just being lucky, and others really can have a real strong commitment to safety and formal programs and a culture of that buys into that, and that's really what we're looking for. And we have a couple different processes we go through to evaluate that on the front end. We're not perfect, but we do a pretty good job of finding the right partners.
So this group of companies comes together to essentially be part of a captive.
Mm-hmm.
They're ultimately, I don't want to get crossed up in the terminology here, but from someone that doesn't know, it's almost like a pool that's self-insuring everybody in that pool, right? So they're paying premium into there. The risks and everything is being administered by a third party. I don't know if you
Mm-hmm.
guys do that or if you guys have a different group that does that, right? And then at the end of the day, like you said, the residual amount left over in any given year gets paid out as dividends. So they're paying less premium, and then ultimately they're making a return. Is the idea, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
the more you can mitigate risk, right, and the more safety precautions you take, and the more it becomes culture, like the group is better off as a whole. Is that?
That's it at a high level. The only
Yeah.
maybe nuanced difference is it isn't just sort of one pool of money. It's really sort of walled off at the individual member company primarily,
Okay.
and then there's a shared layer as well. But it doesn't just all go into the pot and get allocated back. You really control your own destiny by and large first,
Got it.
by how your own individual company performs, and then secondarily how the captive performed. But that's it. We're aggregating volume. We are trying to take a predictable layer of risk among that group, which is kind of the law of large numbers, is how insurance runs. We take a layer and get rewarded for our performance in that layer, and we still buy insurance, or the groups buy insurance for the tough stuff, right? For
Yeah.
the really unpredictable, for the horrific auto accident, or the multi-employee fatality, that sort of thing. We still buy reinsurance for that. But that's the concept. And that's how insurance companies make money. It's risk selection,
Yeah.
but the dirty little secret of traditional insurance is they can usually make money underwriting to a loss through investment income, right? These claims take a long time to pay out, tied up in litigation or work comp claims that pay over a long period of time. Um, and insurance companies are making money on the float generally the whole time, and they can pay out more than $1 in claims and they bring in premium and offset the difference in investment income. We're really trying to do the same thing. We're just trying to take a smaller layer of that risk, and we're kind of flipping that criteria, and that underwriting profit is really, and finding the right partners and make sure we generate an underwriting profit is kind of our number one criteria. We are coordinating the service providers. There's some stuff we do in-house, but you mentioned claims. We outsource most of the claims. We help negotiate reinsurance to buy against the catastrophic loss. We coordinate the asset managers that make up our investment fund. A lot of that stuff we don't do ourselves. We coordinate all that as their consultant, so that we're helping them outsource everything that needs to be outsourced, and we do the rest in-house to ensure that their insurance company is running successfully day to day, because it's
Yeah.
quite literally a day-to-day operating. Technically, it's a reinsurance company.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Um, yeah, super interesting. And why do you think it's? I mean, you said around since the '80s.
Yep.
Obviously, you've captive has experienced some exponential growth. I think I read something about the market share is. I don't know what you guys
Yeah.
put in your materials or whatever in terms of market share size, but it's. I think the awareness, and this is why I was excited about the conversation. I think the awareness, like when I learned about it, I was like, why doesn't everybody know about
Yeah.
this? And I'm curious, like, why isn't it even more pronounced than what you guys have been able to accomplish organizationally?
That's a good question, and it's funny you use the word awareness.
Yeah.
Because we actually have started doing a lot of work around that too, and people like yourself on the CFO side, we've really invested heavily in marketing. Now we market the concept. We don't market even necessarily CRI or specific captives. We certainly don't market specific captives, but we market the concept, and the concept has grown in awareness over the last several years for multiple reasons. In the immediate short term, we have invested in some marketing for the first time ever. We had no real marketing program kind of pre-COVID. We've got a pretty robust marketing department now that spends a lot of time educating, really, and we're trying to get a lot of awareness out to our brokers, obviously, but also to CFOs, the people that you're working with and consulting with. And we see our awareness at the CFO level. If you were to say 4 years ago, probably 30% of CFOs knew what a group captive was.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably nearly 2/3 today, we think.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing. But the other thing is sort of twofold. One is, for a long time, we intentionally just went slow. We were kind of a small niche business. We had pioneered this concept. We were really born out of the YPO originally in the mid 80s. And our founder and chairman and his business partner had a very interesting story and a super entrepreneurial spirit. And so along we went. We kind of started a couple captives, and we were growing slowly, and had this really cool niche business. And just to give some perspective to it, it took us nearly 28 years to write our first $1 billion in premium. Took us about 5 years after that. So we hit our first billion in 2012. Took us about 5 years to write our second billion. It took us about 3.5 years to write our third billion, and we just crossed 4 billion in a little under 2 years.
Wow.
So yeah, exponential growth, something we're really proud of. Not to sort of puff our chest out and say, how great we are. I think it's more of a testament to our customers, and they spread the word as much as anybody else. Right. Our retention rate is about 98%. Wow. So, having been here 17 years ago, I was still facing a lot of, what is this? Is this too good to be true? I don't really understand how I could be saving this much money, how I could be potentially getting this much money back. And many of those customers have now been in for, we have many customers been around for 30 years, but 20, 15, 20, 30-year customers that are telling their friends, that are telling, their peer groups, that are telling the folks at their country club or their trade associations or their small groups, their 20 groups, things like that. It's been really powerful. And so it's just the concept has really taken off, and we've been the biggest beneficiary of that because we certainly have a dominant market share in that space.
And so, let's just say that someone right now was listening that had a company that might fit the profile if they were curious about contacting captive resources. Do they contact you? Do they contact their broker? How does that work?
Yeah, it could be either or. Okay. Ultimately, if they contact us, which that happens quite frequently, we will direct them either to their broker or a broker that we partner with. We do all of our work through retail brokers. So we are not a broker. They are kind of the backbone of our distribution model. We have great broker relationships, big and small, throughout the country. So ultimately, they find their way there. But that's part of what we do right now. We educate. I think you mentioned it earlier. We are a sales organization, just like anybody else that's trying to grow at this rate. But ultimately, I view what people would look at our salespeople and refer to them as that. And I wouldn't discount that, but I would add to it that they're educators. They spend their time in the marketplace educating brokers to get excited about the group captive concept and make it something they want to bring to their best clients and prospects that fit. This isn't for everybody, but for those that fit. And then ultimately, we in tandem with them educate their customers to make sure they know what they're signing up for and that they understand, the concept and they understand the opportunity for a pretty significant reward for the right performance. And there's also the opportunity to pay more, right? It's a risk reward relationship, and make sure they understand that. And those that do and that are really committed to safety and have the right culture and don't feel that they're, just hoping for good results, the model just works brilliantly over time.
Got it. And you mentioned, property and casualty specifically. And as somewhat of a novice, insurance, person, would that be inclusive of workers' comp?
It would. We're primarily, workers' comp is the big driver of our business. Okay. And workers' comp, general liability, and auto make up the vast bulk of our portfolio now. We have a small property book and a really heavily growing book in the medical stop loss space.
Okay. Really neat. You mentioned the sort of the rapid growth, and it's almost like the half-life is decreasing on, growing to the next billion, right? I mean, you've been there for 17 years. You said 2012 was the first billion, I think, right? And just thinking, now we're sitting here in 2023. So you've been there, you've seen it, live.
Yep.
For a business that, another theme I wanted to hit on is sometimes you don't know if you're going to be on that, crazy up and to the right, roller coaster ride, kind of thing. But I got to imagine that along the way, you personally have learned a lot, a lifetime of lessons, like anything that you could think of that you would pass on to somebody that's on a similar journey that they should look out for, things you did, you like personally or professionally that you think you did well or that you would do a different way this time around.
So are you asking more on the business side of things or on the leadership side or both or?
I think it's kind of both. Like I'm just imagining myself, being on a similar journey, and hopefully I am, right? With all things third road. But um, I think that regardless of what you're doing, being on that accelerated ride
Yep.
is, you're going to have competition for your time, whether it be, your family, your health, your how you're relating with your coworkers versus going out there and winning business, right? Leadership development stuff, mentoring, younger people. Like there's so many things that you
Yeah.
could do, and there's only you and a limited amount of time, right? So I'm just kind of curious if
Yeah.
you have anything that could come to mind that.
Well, I mean, I could talk all day about some of that stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's hard, right? And everybody thinks watching a business grow that way and all the things that might come with it. Um, it's been a great ride,
Yeah.
and but it's not easy, and on many different levels. I mean, on the business side of things, I think we've done things really well. If I'm patting ourselves collectively on the back
Yeah.
in terms of preserving our culture.
Yeah.
And as I shift to this new role, it's the most um, important thing to me is that we preserve our company culture. And that is hard to do when you're a rapidly growing company, and one that 3 years ago, like most companies or many companies, we were 100% in the office 5 days a week, and everything that's come with kind of the post-COVID way that the world does business. Hiring at a fast pace, people that aren't in the office 5 days a week, people that are full-time remote, which is something that didn't exist for us a few years ago. uh, I couldn't be a more firm believer in culture,
Mm-hmm.
as it pertains to business. We both have athletic backgrounds. I've been on great athletic teams, over the years that had average talent because they had great culture and great leadership. And I've been on some really poor teams that had unbelievable talent because we had a losing culture and probably not the best leadership. So those kind of things are really important to me, kind of at the business level. Um, from a personal standpoint, yeah, lessons learned. I could talk all day. Like I
Yeah.
said, it's hard work. Um, I'd say there's a few things I could say. There's first is leadership and growth, and going on a path like this is something you have to want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of people say they want to do it, but that's because they think they're supposed to say that, or because they have an ego, and everybody's got an ego, but they've got an ego that they want a certain title,
Yep.
and that's just not what leadership is really about, because it's really hard, and that's the one thing I've learned, hard in a lot of different ways. It's hard. Time is the biggest one. The
Yep.
demands on your time. That's something I've probably struggled with a lot and continue to try and work on. And it's both in the office and, showing up at work and having your time be completely filled for a day, and then having to come home and feel like you got to try and clean out your inbox. And with 3 young kids at home, just like you, trying to be present, but
Yep.
trying to stay on top of things is a real struggle. Um, you know, uh, Trying to figure out what pace to go at, I feel like is a real struggle. We were a company, as I just described, that went slow for a long time, and we were really thoughtful about things, and still trying to be thoughtful, but there's a time to go fast, um, and there's a time to go slow. And there's a friend of mine that I grew up with, Rishi Narayan. He's got a great TED talk, and a brilliant guy, super successful entrepreneur. You should have him on podcast
There you go.
sometime.
Let's do it.
And he talks about this concept of a fast B versus a slow A, and
Mm.
there's and it's I just just that very simple thing has always really resonated with me, that there are times that you need to really go slow and thoughtfully and make sure you get things perfect. And then there are times that you can accept a B or a B plus because you got to go fast.
Yeah.
That's something that has been hard. It's hard to do in practice because you don't ever want to do a B. When you're competitive, you don't ever want to have a B. But there's times to go fast and there's times to go slow. You've got to surround yourself with great people.
Yeah.
That's the number one thing for me. And when, I've tried to do that as I've evolved from a salesperson or leading small teams to now trying to lead bigger teams, is just when I trust somebody, surround myself with a talented person. You're handing off relationships and businesses that are really you're personally passionate about and they're important to you. You gotta be able to let go and surround yourself with good people, and you gotta pick complementary partners, people that have complementary skill sets to you, because we're all good at certain things. Rare is the person who's exceptional at everything.
Yep.
And I like to think that I'm a self-aware person and I know what my strengths are and know what my weaknesses are, and I want to surround myself with people who are really good at what my weaknesses are. Yeah, I think what gives me the greatest probably reward from being a leader is to try and impact people's lives. I mean, that's why you want to do it, right? That's, I've listened to your podcast, I've listened to your journey and why you've made some of the career moves that you've made. And it's easy to point to money and opportunity and titles, but it really comes down to, like, do you want to have an impact on people's lives? Because there's a lot of ways you can accomplish the other things and make a lot of money. And for me, this was the best path for me to go down. And it's really pretty fulfilling to feel like you have positively impacted somebody's life and their family's life. And that's something I've had really good mentors in this business, and this place, this company has really impacted my life. And now it's kind of a pay it forward thing for me at this point.
I love this. I don't even remember where I first heard this, but there's this line, and I'll get to it here in a second. But what I love about it is it's universally true. No matter who you are, no matter what your work title is, or where you live, or your house, or your income, or whatever, right? And the line is this: at the end of your life, what are people going to line up to thank you for? And we all have an opportunity in one person's way of doing it might be totally different than another. But what is your thing? You know what I mean? What is the people that, what are people going to line up to thank you for? And it's one of those things that, like, you pause for a second, you're like, man, am I doing enough? But at the same point in time, I think it's centering, in a way. I mean, like, I'm not going to go into something because I was going to go into more of a family thing there. But I want to save that for another day. But just thinking about, impacting somebody's life, whether it be mentorship or giving them a career opportunity or being charitable. I don't know. It's just good stuff there.
100%.
Awesome. One of the themes too that I wanted to hit on, because I think it's really important to double click on here, whether it be for your kids, my kids, people coming up, that are graduating, newer in their career. And you were hitting on it when you were talking about the Wyoming thing, right? And me, when I'm talking about smiling and dialing and being told to go away and, okay, I'll call you back tomorrow. There's just this, like, determination aspect, right? Where, my kids at home, I just say nothing in this world is guaranteed. Nobody's going to hand over the keys to anything to you. You got to go out and get it for yourself. Not for me, not for mom, but for yourself, right? And, your story about Wyoming was one of those, but I know you told me a story too about having to go overseas in Europe and cut your teeth over there. And it was a similar type of thing, if I remember, where it was like, okay, we need to learn about Lloyd's of London, JP go, kind of thing. And I'm sure it was a little bit more eloquent than that, but, like, talk to me about that or other experiences that you've just had to go out there and be dedicated and figure things out.
Yeah, well, there was certainly a lot more grit in Wyoming than there was my London experience, which we probably talked about over a few beers,
Yeah.
and that was a lot of my London experience, which was fantastic from a learning standpoint, and
Yep.
spent a few months over there early in my career. Gallagher was kind enough to send me over there and learn about the London marketplace, but
Yep.
I probably couldn't categorize that as grit. That was just maybe getting out of a local comfort zone and everything here and going to a foreign country for a few months, but a tremendous opportunity and
But
an amazing. But
immersing yourself
yes,
in what I took from it,
yep,
immersing yourself in an experience, right? You could
100%.
in an opportunity, right? You could have gone there, mailed it in, just like somebody might go to a conference and not really pay attention, even though they're on the company clock and the company's paying for it or whatever. But you took advantage of a learning opportunity, a networking opportunity, a chance to just kind of expand your professional horizon,
Yeah.
right? And I just think there's something to that. You know what I mean? Whether it be that or just grit is probably more indicative of the
Yeah, I
Wyoming
mean,
thing. But like, what do you?
two separate concepts, right? Grit, and maybe just getting out of your comfort zone, whatever that means. That might
Yeah.
mean, going and living in a small flat in London. While it's not the same as maybe a lot of people would talk about grit, you gotta get yourself into a different comfort zone for what you're used to, and I really enjoy that. Other people might not, but
Right.
I would encourage everybody to take advantage of those kind of opportunities to learn and get a greater exposure on how people in the world think, and
Yeah.
get different perspectives. That doesn't have to be a foreign country. That can be a different state or a different industry or just talking to people. But I think I've always enjoyed hearing different people's and different cultures' perspective on various things.
Yeah.
The idea of hard work, yeah, I mean, it should be a given, right?
Yeah.
That you need in most profession. Very very few are you going to succeed without just getting up and grinding.
Yep.
And that's something I really learned early on in my business career. I think probably stems from earlier than that, really, and
Yep.
and being a competitive athlete growing up. I played a lot of sports, but wrestling was probably my biggest sport, and certainly the one I was most competitive at, which takes a tremendous amount of grit. Individual sport.
Yeah.
First of all, a lot of lessons. Whether doesn't have to be wrestling, tennis, golf, and any individual sport. I think a lot of life lessons, and that nobody else to blame but yourself. You're going to get out of it what you put into it. Can't really rely on teammates to help you when you're in the moment. A lot of personal values from that.
Yeah.
Also, I just think it really taught me how to sort of push myself, physically and mentally. And really, I think it's helped me get very sort of comfortable in a lot of different settings as
Yeah.
well, right? I grew up in a kind of middle class, mostly white collar community. Wrestling tends to be more of a blue collar sport. I don't think I could convince anybody that I'm blue collar, but I certainly love being around people with that kind of mentality.
Yep.
I was very comfortable my whole life and my upbringing with it. Really enjoyed it, frankly, being around kids that sort of had those same work ethics. Probably no coincidence then that I really ended up being in construction and transportation and oil and gas, and they might make fun of our Peter Millar wardrobe and all that, but I really enjoy those type of customers, those type of people. I mean, to me, that's almost what this job has given me more than anything is, we live 20 miles outside a world-class city.
Yep.
I don't get excited to go to another world-class city. I mean, they're always fun to check out and go to whatever entertainment or sports or restaurants reside in that city while you're there. And I don't mean to say I don't enjoy them. I do, just as I enjoy going to downtown Chicago. But the opportunities I've had to go to real American communities where there are tons of business owners like you represent now, or you're looking to represent, right? I listened to your one podcast when you talked about just drawing a radius of what was it, a 10-mile radius
Yeah, it
around
was a
your house,
30-mile
and
radius
30-mile radius
around
around
my
your
house.
house, and how many businesses were in there.
Exactly.
And you start going around the country and seeing how many big businesses there are that really make this country go.
Yep.
The guys who have 100 trucks, the guys who are doing $50 million in construction business, the guys who are doing $10 million in local distribution. They're pillars of their community, and they've got awesome networks, and where not just me, but many of our people can go around the country, whether it's to towns like Bakersfield, California, or, Lafayette, Louisiana, or Enid, Oklahoma, and, Buffalo, New York, and places that we just do a ton of business that the average business person doesn't get to travel to. I feel really blessed that's kind of been my experience at Captive Resources. I feel a lot more well-rounded as a human being and as a businessman.
That's awesome. Well, tons to digest in here. I really think it's not, like you said, it's not a new product, but it's a product that has an increasing amount of awareness, and I just feel like more and more people need to know about it and hear about it as a potential option for something that could potentially make sense for their
Tell
business.
your friends. Yeah.
Yeah, tell your friends. Tell your friends. But no, I mean, I really appreciate it. I think that there's plenty of people, entrepreneurs themselves, or people that are around entrepreneurs that really get a lot out of the conversation and hearing what you have to say. So I appreciate you coming on to explain it. It's really helpful.
Yeah.
So we do have some final questions. I normally go with 3, but you're a special guest, and you're a special guest because Captive Resources is located in Itasca, Illinois.
Yes, it is.
Also known as my hometown. Look out for the statue next time you're there. There's no statue, but it's funny to say that. I say the same thing every time. So there's a few people that'll go, oh, he said it again, but that's all right. But Itasca, Illinois, interesting town, small number of people that live there. But ultimately, it's got a lot of business around it. It's almost similar to kind of what you're talking about in terms of one of those towns that nobody's really heard of, but there's a lot going on there. So that's not my question. My question is, any 1 or 2 spots that are your sort of go-to spots in the greater Itasca area?
Yeah, there certainly are. Number one would have to be not just mine, but a Captive Resources staple.
Okay.
Would be the Fox and Turtle restaurant at the Itasca Country Club.
Yep.
So open to the public. It is not part of the feed. So it's not exclusive to the members. So go there. The eggplant salad, you cannot go wrong. Just a fun bar scene and great food. Our company probably has, I would guess, on average 4 to 5 tables there a day. It's just a couple minutes down the road from our office.
Yep.
The next one certainly, and I don't mean to slight Itasca, but I think technically it's in Elk Grove Village. Would be Coach's Corner.
Okay.
You ever go to Coach's Corner?
I don't think I have.
No, great old sports bar. So those would be our top 2 for sure.
Okay.
And then I think the last place would be affectionately known as the Greek Place. I'm not sure anybody actually knows the name of it.
Yep.
But it's off Irving Park. And it's great. Those are kind of our 3 staples.
Irving Park and Rawling Road.
Yeah.
There's a place in there, just so you know, called Buenos Dias Burritos, and I think it's my favorite burrito in the entire world. So
okay, that's a pretty bold proclamation.
It is a bold. I mean, I've tried a few.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you're gonna not believe that, but I have.
Well, downtown Itasca, unfortunately, we lost a couple of the old businesses. The bakery and the diner have gone out of business. So those we were staunch supporters of as well. But
yeah, Tree Guys is still there.
Well, Tree Guys, I'm remiss to leave Tree Guys out, but we don't frequent that enough. But we probably should.
All right, very good. All right, last 3, top 3 rock and roll bands of all time. What do you think?
Well, I know this will probably disappoint you because, well, I mean, when we go to name that tune, I'm a pretty poor participant. I'm not much of a rock and roll guy.
Okay.
Not much of a band guy. So, growing up, '90s. I mean, everybody loved Pearl Jam. If you made me pick two bands, it'd probably be Pearl Jam and Queen. But I'm not much of a band guy.
Okay.
More of kind of, if you kind of go to my golf playlist, it's going to
Okay.
kind of go country on the front nine.
Okay.
And then maybe, back to the roots, sort of old school rap on the back nine. Little Biggie, little Tupac, and maybe mature a little bit to sort of Jay-Z and
Yep.
Nelly and those guys. And so, but kind of country and old school rap.
So we're talking the same language. What about on country? Who's your top one or two? You like
Went to
old
Morgan
country?
Wallen this
Yep.
summer. That was a
Okay.
great show.
Yep. Me too.
Sam Hunt.
Okay.
Chris Stapleton.
All right.
Probably,
So
yeah.
more modern country than
Zach Bryan.
Yep.
Probably more modern country
Okay.
these days. I mean, back a lot of Kenny Chesney and Tim McGraw in the college days. Can't go wrong with them either.
But you've been committed for a
Yeah.
while. All right. All right.
I was an
You're
early adopter to
all
country
right.
music.
There you go. All right. This is a good one. We're in the holiday season right now. Any holiday that you think is the best one?
And such a hard question.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Christmas guy.
Yeah.
So
But
I think I got to go Christmas, and it's the spirit of Christmas. Being a Glen Ellen guy, the 4th of July is climbing up my ladder.
Yep.
Growing up in Michigan, it was all about kind of the lake and northern Michigan, and a lot of family that we would always visit, and that was a great kind of family tradition holiday. Now we moved here. We're affectionately Lake Ellen, right downtown, right
Yep.
by. And so we've become the 4th of July party, as you know, which we learned about when we first moved here. That's climbing the ladder pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did they get that on disclosure documents or like
We
must have 4th of July party? Don't try not to.
pretty much the realtor did say, you're going to have a 4th of July party. And we're like, no, we go to Michigan every year. She's like, no, you don't. Not anymore.
Not anymore. Oh, love it. I'm actually surprised the diversity of the responses that I get to the holiday question. Some people, some people are like Memorial Day and like, oh, okay, all right. But I would have gone Christmas and the 4th of July too. All right, last one. If you weren't doing what you're currently doing for work, anything completely unrelated career-wise that you could see yourself enjoying, thriving in, whatever. Sports agent.
Well, sports would be one of it. I think, looking back now, that's the last thing I would ever want to do is be a sports agent, talk about a hard business.
Yeah.
And having a little bit of insight to that. I think, you get a different appreciation as when you're in your 40s than you do when you're, 20 something, and you just think being attached to sports would be cool.
Yep.
It depends. I mean, I always thought I would have loved to have been a coach.
Yeah.
At any level. Certainly the professional level would have been great. And maybe that's why I'm enjoying leadership and did a little coaching sort of early in my life, and missed that a bit. But that would be one. But I think from a business standpoint, the business that really appeals to me is real estate. I've just always kind of had an eye for real estate. I like design. I like kind of looking for real estate. I never really have the courage to buy much. Started kind of passively investing in some things. Now looking for, whenever the end of this career is, somebody gave me some advice a long time ago that I thought was really astute, which is you retire from something to something.
Yeah.
Keep yourself busy, keep your mind active, keep your body active, and keep working and kind of stay in the game, but maybe not have the same demands on your time.
Yep.
So that's something to me I'm looking at today, early in my career, with a long window into the future that I could see being a second career retirement gig, or however you want to view it. But I think that's a fascinating industry from all aspects.
Yeah. Anything in particular, like the development side, or like the like multifamily, like housing kind of thing?
No, nothing really in particular. Done a little bit of development, some larger residential buildings downtown. And investing in a smaller project right now. Interested in vacation rentals, just development, and I just like the design part of it too. We've done a couple homes here. So maybe one day it's buying and flipping a couple homes. There's not any time for that in our schedules now, but it's something I always get enjoyment out of.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, JP Boulus, thank you very much for being here. This has been awesome. Like I said, I think that's a great learning opportunity for a lot of folks. So I hope this helps spread the word about what you guys are up to. And I appreciate you being here.
Well, thanks. Appreciate you having me. And hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Sounds good, bud.
All right.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Yeah, you too.